Uh-oh, YouTube is telling me that I am live. All right. Hello. Welcome aboard. Happy Wednesday. As I hit the go button. We're here with the Land of Eam, which I picked up through Black Friday. So I just picked those on my own accord. I'd seen Land of Eam. I saw it at PAX Unplugged. It looks beautiful. It's a huge book. I would have picked up the physical copy if I thought I was going to if I felt like I was on the verge of going to be running the system. I mean, I didn't look inside. That's what we're going to do. We're going to look inside. It is a beautiful book. I don't own the physical book. It is one, like I said, I was very tempted, but given the amount of space and just budget and everything else, if I really need to, unless someone's going to give me the book, and hey, Land of Eam, if you want to send me a book, I'm happy to have it. However, I'm really trying to kind of limit what I'm going to get physically. I think if I'm gonna play the game, like I know I'm going to run it or play it, I'll pick up the physical book. I just think it's, I don't know. I just have, especially when I'm reading it leisure-wise, I much prefer the physical book to PDF. That said, we have the PDF, which I got on the drive-throughs Black Friday sale. It was reduced to a ridiculously low price, which I couldn't resist. The concept of the game, you just get from the description on drive-through, it's kind of Lord of the Rings meets the Muppets, which sounds a lot of fun. You could see from the artwork on the cover. But yeah, that's it. I really don't know. I really don't know too much about it, other than, like I said, it's a beautiful looking book and some of the other things. There's a map, which we may or may not pull up. I'm not sure if we're going to need the map, but there's a hex map that's also in the bundle and a character sheet that comes in the drive-through bundle. I want to say that some of the other physical bits and bobs you can get that I saw on display were pretty beautiful, all cool, high quality, all that. But I don't have it to show because I don't have it. Well, this is what I got. So we're going to look at it. Here's some, I'm going with some tea Kuan Yin tea for the working man. I just steeped it and poured it, so it's a bit hot, so I apologize for any slurping that may take place. If this is the first time you end up tuning in to one of these, I do these periodically. I actually have been not doing them as many as I used to, not for any particular reason. I need to get kind of back on the horse doing these. Way back at the beginning, when I first started doing them, I literally went page by page through the entire book. And something like this, which I think is a pretty huge book, 200 and let's see, my PDF reader is saying 258 pages for this one. But I think this one is actually like a letter-sized book. It's not, zine-sized, anything like that. I will go through page by page, and it just took way too long. They ended up being like part 12 of 12, and by the end of the 12, they're just, I get it. Folks get kind of burned down on it. I probably get a little bit burned down on it. You kind of forget where you were what was going on with the first bit when you're reading the last bit. It's tough. So now I tend to go, I'm not going to call it highlights because I don't pre-read anything. I come in blind. My original pitch was, hey, imagine back with your friends, you're at a gaming shop and you find a game that pulls your attention. You kind of flip through it and you show your friends the stuff that, looks really cool. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to flip through it, see what looks really cool, and then read that stuff. Now, we'll see. I don't know anything about the system, and other than the fact that Lord of the Rings meets the Muppets, I don't know anything about the setting. I'm not sure which is going to pull me more. Maybe a little bit of A, maybe a little bit of B. We might do this in 2 parts. I will still do things in multiple parts if I feel like there's enough meat on the bone or we don't get to cover what we want to cover. So we'll see about that as well. Let's just start digging in there and see what we got. So this was designed and written by Ben Costa and James Parks with, let's see, anything else to note? Art by Ben Costa, Sean Kiernan, Annalise Mack, Sam Mameli, Rosario Mendez, and Rob Gatto. Cover art by Justin Gerard. That's a really nice piece we just saw. And there you definitely get some of the Muppet vibe with a couple of the characters there. So it looks like, you can see the kind of mix of fantasy and Muppet we're seeing. So it looks like there's maybe a human, could be an elf. I see long ears. I'm not sure. There's a Kermit the Knight over there. It looks like a dwarf of some kind, definitely an elf hanging down there. You can see, also, this is a really clever cover, I guess, in a sense that you're getting a lot of the bits of the game in here now that I'm kind of studying it a little bit. You can see here that we've got a bard character because they're using a violin to try to hoist back up this other elf who's wearing some armor. I'm not sure if you'd say, oh, is that a cleric? It looks like is that a mace? Is that a staff? Not sure. We have what I would guess would be a dwarf character, but they're also casting a spell. We've got the human here that's, I'm going to say thief, right? We're looking at, oh, okay, seems like she's got a gem. I thought at first she was casting a spell, but I think actually it's some kind of gem. Casting clearly the Kermit the Knight is some kind of warrior, only because of the two-handed sword, and they're not really wearing any armor. And then I don't even know what this guy is. Looks like Cousin It, but made of gloop or something, holding a battle axe. And then we've got pig-faced orcs or something like that. And then we have a dragon or wyvern or something. Don't see any wings, which it'd be kind of cool if they went with some different kinds of dragons, but we'll see. So you can see from the cover kind of what kind of game we're getting, what sort of setting, and very colorful. Oh, look at that! There's like a sad tree ant guy back there. Cool. All right, let's get to the table of contents. We've got the basics. Yeah, I'll probably look a little bit about that. Yeah. So let's see. Yep. So all told, 242 pages to the map. It is an age of ashes. The gleaming empires of old have faded into obscurity, leaving a tired world riddled with dungeons and ruled by fiends. They say that the world has no heroes, but clearly they'd never met you. And then we get another very colorful art piece that I'm sure is showcasing at least a good bit of the options. We got a big bird looking person over here who's playing some kind of, I'm not sure. So she's got the long, I don't know, not a pirate hat, but sort of I'm not sure what I don't know what we call that kind of hat. I don't know if it's supposed to be like a tricorn hat, but anyway, kind of a hat and then a rapier. We've got a mushroom guy with a crossbow. We've got, I'm not sure if that's like a dog boy, but definitely with a hammer and a miner's helmet with the light on the end of it. Another kind of bardic type, a little person. I would guess they're going for druid. It's got a couple of animal friends and a gnarled staff. And we've got kind of another human elf, I'm not sure, warrior looking type. And then we've got some kind of big barbarian type, not sure, I don't know, it's definitely kind of an anthropomorphic animal, I would guess, but which one, I'm not sure. I don't know if I would say bear. Maybe it's a bear. You could sell me on a bunch of things, but we're getting an idea of what kind of stuff we're going to see coming in, so that's cool. Okay, the basics. What is this game all about? Well, I'm glad you asked. All right, I'm going to read a little bit of this. Land of Eam is a tabletop fantasy role-playing game about adventures, exploring and discovering the remnants of a forgotten age. Players portray colorful, often whimsical characters set against a backdrop of perilous fantasy. As lore-seeking wanderers, fortune-seeking pioneers, and adventure-seeking do-gooders, these characters travel the land of Eam during a time devoid of heroes. Land of Eam is designed to value creativity, role-playing, and exploration. Here are a few of the game's core principles. All right, I'm always interested in core principles. But you can see here it's your pretty regular standard fantasy setup. Hey, Mr. Work, how are you? Okay, so core principles. Character abilities allow players to invent and shape the world around them, and the game's dice mechanic encourages collaborative storytelling. Characters earn experience not by slaying monsters, but by role-playing, exploring, and engaging with the narrative and game world. While getting into fights is part of the game, players almost always have opportunities to talk their way out of conflict. Almost every creature or monster encountered in the land of Eam is a person. They speak a language, have thoughts, feelings, desires, and motivations, and players should be willing to parlay before running headlong into a slugfest. In Land of Eam, it would be wrong to assume every manticore wants to eat you, just as it would be foolish to think every human you meet wants to kill you. but what if they do want to kill you? Mr. Rourke asks, whimsical characters like assassins? I'm not sure that assassins are in this game. I'm thinking an assassin as a character type is probably not what they're going for. What they're going for here, but we shall see. The note about talking to things, I think, is one that doesn't get brought up enough. It's probably a good one because really, I feel like even in the old BX or OSR game, I don't think it's a bad thing to try to talk it out. Now, granted, depending on and people feel very strongly about this, about the different creatures and their overall mentalities, but clearly, conceptually, even from the white box, the idea was you could talk to these creatures. And there's something, whether it's implied or made explicit, about A, the fact that you could learn a language like Orc or Goblin, and B, that you could talk to them, and then C, that you might have opportunities to talk to them. Right? They're not just coming at you screaming. In Lord of the Rings, right, the orcs, you're not really talking to the orcs. The orcs are attacking you. I mean, you may talk to them if you capture one, or if they capture you, they may talk to you. But other than that, you're running, fleeing, or maybe you're attacking, you're trying to evade, but you're not actually talking to them much. But in just about every other setting, there are usually reasons, very good ones, lethality, all that you want to actually talk your way out. So actually just putting up front and saying, hey, this is one of our core principles, is try to work it out before what was it, Clausewitz? What war is the final, the last resort of politics? I don't remember exactly, but talk it out first. I think it's a fine thing. Now, of course, we're also getting into some of kind of how this game is going to play out. Obviously, narrative is a thing. This is not presumably just going to drop you in a sandbox, or maybe it is. I guess we'll have to see. But definitely, the idea of kind of shaping a story seems to imply that we're not going with more just what's the word I'm looking for. Emergent stories, though maybe we are. And then you're going to get some kind of the players. It seems like going to have some ability to do some of the collaborative kind of world, or what they call it, world building, and just sort of figuring things out. Which again is something I think often gets kind of. I think people tend to think about that as that's kind of a story gamesy thing, but I think that happens even in other games. Maybe not codified as much. I mean, if I'm playing a game. Or if I'm playing a game, let's say it's BX or something, right? Okay, and I'm trying to decide where are my characters from, and maybe I want to say I'm looking at a map. If the GM gives us a map, and I say, it'd be cool to be from these woods over here, I can imagine the GM's like, well, I don't really have anything in those woods. I really haven't fleshed that out. So like, what town is it from? Like, what is your hometown from? And like, what's the setup there? Now they kind of, I think that stuff happened just. What's the word like for casually, right? But I feel like it gets more pushback when it's codified. But when this is kind of stuff we would just do anyway, like, I don't know about that. You have a strong idea about it? Okay, let's go. I remember coming up with all kinds of things when I made back in college when I made some crazy living weapon character. Like me and the GM did some collaborative world building, but we just did, about like, well, what was the conflict that it came from, and when like these kind of things, because that wasn't part of their necessarily of their world, and it was like, well, you've got this idea, like let's hash it out. We were playing D&D second edition AD&D, but we probably would, neither one of us, I think, if you asked us back in thing, was said, hey, are you doing collaborative world building as a core concept? We go, no, like I don't even know what that phrase might mean, but we were kind of doing it. I am curious the shape it's going to take here, I guess. But those are our core settings. So abilities allow players to invent and shape the world. So it's not even, like I said, it's we're baking it in. We're not doing it on a casual level or something you might just do as a GM kind of off. We're going to have there's some mechanic that is actually going to tie into that. We're not earning XP through slaying monsters, but through doing the role playing, exploring, and engagement narrative and that kind of thing. I'm curious if that's going to be kind of yield milestones, or if they have some other method. I don't hate milestones, but I also kind of like it when it's player facing. In other words, and we'll see how they do it, right? It's, oftentimes you see milestones is when the players do this thing that I've determined as the GM, well, they'll level up, but it's not necessarily always clear or communicated to that, and there's not necessarily choice about it. It's, and maybe that for some folks that is a what's the word? that's a feature, not a bug. That okay, this is going to keep the players moving along this thing we're doing because of the XP thing. But I tend to like it. Part of why I appreciated gold for XP was the players can figure out where to get the gold from and they get XP from. So as long as there are sources of gold, and those are dungeons and dangerous places, all that stuff, which is pretty obvious, then they can kind of pick and choose what they want to do to get it, and they can kind of figure out how much risk for how much reward they want to do, yada, yada, yada. And I appreciate that, but this may not be the kind of game where that's appropriate, which I totally get. And then, right, talk your way out of troubles, and then, hey, oh, I missed one, and it's a good one. Whoops, sorry about that. Land of Eam is all about player-driven exploration. Random encounters are a core part of the game as characters travel across huge hex maps. Well, there you go. So maybe maybe we are getting more. There is going to be a bunch of emergent storytelling thing, and that's where it's going to be interesting. To where things like that, random encounter stuff, is going to feed in also with that, whatever those character abilities that kind of shape the world. So that'll be kind of fun. That kind of changes everything. The fact that they're baking in this idea of, hey, random encounters are a thing. Get used to it, pal. Hey, okay, the setting. Eam is a land of color and wonder, a world with many storied regions and realms teeming with diverse cultures, characters, and creatures. Eam is also a land in decay, for the great civilizations of the past crumbled long ago at the hands of the mysterious Gloom King. Ever since, the world has declined into an untamed, unchecked land filled with all manner of monsters and fiends, fearsome warlords, and, most recently, greedy tycoons, ushering in a truly industrial age called the Dungeon Era, a time chaotically run by rival corporations locked in a never-ending quest to outdo one another in business and expansion. All the while, average folk toil away in mines, factories, and dungeons, eking out a meager existence. Hey, Brian Smith. Brian says they love this setting. Cool, I can't wait to dig into it. The southern realm of Eam and seat of corporate power, known as the Mucklands, is broken into 6 distinct regions. So we have the Drippy Downs, Fleabag County, Quagmash, River Country, Scalawag Strand, and the used-to-be forest. Oh, no, not the used-to-be forest. I want the forest is still there. All right. So we get a little bit, and I'm not going to read all the bits. We can come back into some of the setting stuff later on. But basically, we've got a bunch of different, it looks like terrain kind of things. So the Drippy Downs, right, Rolling Green Hills, Fleabag County is some cities, the Quagmash. So we got some swamp. We've got a river country, rivers. We have a coastline, and then kind of at least what used to be a forest. Barren landscape of cracked earth and felled trees. So kind of a wasteland sort of area. So, you get some, I really like the flavor, and we get kind of a bunch of, if not every terrain type under the sun, which, by the way, I don't think you need to have. I think, sometimes when we're building worlds, and I certainly run into this, I kind of want to go, well, I want to have a desert, and I want to have an ice, and I want to have whatever, but you don't have to. Right? If it's not really appropriate, or it's just you don't want to build out that much of the world to cover pole to pole or every different temperature and water zone, then precipitation zone, I guess, then don't. And we also can guess that it's not going to be totally medieval. I'm guessing maybe there's at least going to be some, I don't know if it's going to be Victorian era, but obviously there's some kind of industry, mining and things like that. I get the sense maybe we're doing more of a Renaissanceian, I'm not sure, or a mix. Brian says the temptation to apply the entire monster by biome table is strong. Yes. It's definitely strong. Yeah, and I feel the same thing, and it's a struggle, right? I want to include every biome and everything, but it's like, I don't have to. You gotta kind of play within your means, right? What's manageable? What can you do? What do you have stuff for? All right, and then the tone, for all its post-apocalyptic doom and gloom, Land of Eam is tonally quite lighthearted and droll, based on our fantasy book series Rickety Stitch and the Gelatinous Goo and Dungeoneer Adventures. It combines Lord of the Rings high fantasy epicness with a heavy dose of Muppets-like whimsy and a dash of Mad Max dystopia. Okay, well, I'm not familiar with Rickety Stitch and Gelatinous Goo or the Dungeoneer Adventures, so new to me. Okay, what you need to play. All right, they're using all, your normal kind of dice, character sheets, of course. I want to learn the core mechanic, obviously, because it helps read things, but I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time on it unless something really catches me. And of course, if you are here in the chat and something really catches you, then you type in the chat, and then we can look at it more deeply. I mean, of course, if you're not watching this live and I missed something or something's interesting, let me know, and maybe I can zoom in on it in another video or stream. Because there's no way I'm going to get everything, catch every nuance, yada, yada, yada. So, and also, just apologies in advance, a caveat, if I miss something, misinterpret something, blah, 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 it's going to happen. It happens all the time. Just let me know, and I'll look at it again if I've gotten the wrong idea, or you can just correct me, or, whatever. Or yell at me. That also will work. Okay, dice mechanics. Whenever a PC does something where the outcome is uncertain, they should make a check to find out what happens. Checks can happen proactively. That's initiated by the player using a PC ability. All right, that's already an interesting wrinkle. And reactively, called for by the GM. To make a check, roll a d12, adding or subtracting a skill modifier. The result determines the success or failure. So it's a d12 plus a mod. We don't know what the span of the mods are, but basically, you don't have to worry about anything higher than 12, it would appear. So 12 is a complete success. 9 to 11 is... So I guess 12 would be a crit, right? But it seems like the way this is set up, it doesn't have to be a natural 12. 12 puts a skill, so if you get 12, it doesn't have to be nat 12, just you have to get 12, you've got that kind of crit success. 9 to 11 is a regular success. 6 to 8 is success with a twist. 3 to 5 is failure with a plus, and 1 to 2 is complete failure. But presumably, well, I don't know. Interestingly enough, so with a couple things I don't know. So there are a couple interesting things here that I didn't get. We'll have to see. We don't know. And as I repeat myself. First things first. Don't know if you can have negative modifiers. Because this is roll plus mod, not... You can get it if you have, +2 to a skill, and I don't know if that's easy, medium. It's probably with the way this, I'm guessing your skill modifiers would only be maybe 0, 1, or 2. I can't really imagine giving away more than 3. Because that would tilt it pretty darn far. And we don't know yet if there's some kind of negative modifier on the other end. Like, this is a hard task, so you're a minus something. It might not be. It might just be a flat roll, right? If it is, let's just assume for now it's a flat roll. Little modifiers go a long way. Because as soon as you have a modifier of 2, you can't have a crit fail. Because it appears from this that a natural 1 is not a auto fail. And a 12 is not an auto success, which means that if negative modifiers do exist, and you roll a 12, but you have a -1, you can't get the complete success thing. And this is just my first read, obviously. So that's an interesting kind of system. Just if you have 0, if I'm reading this correctly, the 6, 7, and 8 on a d12 is your kind of mid zone, right? So on a 12, the median score, right, it would be, or your average, I should say, I guess, is 6.5, so you roll up to 7. So right in that 6 to 8 zone. So 6, 7, and 8 are going to be probably, I would guess, or just, well, it's a D12. So each one of those actually, never mind then, right? Yeah, I'm reading that wrong. I'm thinking of 2d6. And a D12, each one of them has a 1 in 12 chance. So each particular face has the same chances. So actually, if we're looking at this, you've got a 1 in 6 chance of a complete failure, a 1 in 12 chance of complete success, 3, 4, 5. Then you have a 1 in 4 chance of failure with a plus, a 1 in 4 chance of success with a twist, and a 1 in 4 chance of success. So it's interesting, right? So 1 in 6, 1 in 12, everything else is a flat 1 in 4. So you have basically, yeah, right? Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah. That would be, but basically the game is skewing. So I guess interestingly enough, the game is skewing towards some type of forward momentum. Either you fail, but with the plus presumably being kind of a fail forward sort of dealio, or you're going to succeed with some kind of complication, or you're going to succeed. That's where the game's really putting you. Maybe interesting in there is that you have a slightly higher chance of failing than you do of critically succeeding, or complete failing, I should say, than critical succeeding. But we haven't factored any of your skill modifiers in there. So once you factor that in, that actually pushes it, because then it's if you have a +1 skill, suddenly you can only fail on a 1, and now you need an 11 or 12. So that's a neat little. I'm assuming that they meant to do that. It's kind of a neat little thing, because as soon as you're doing something that you're skilled with, that probability flips, that you're more likely now to get the complete success than you are to get the complete failure, which totally makes sense. Okay, interpreting the results. So yeah, complete failure, right? The attempt fails, something else goes wrong in the process. So yeah, you're failed plus a complication. And then failure with a plus is you get a failure, but you do get something positive comes out of it. Success with a twist, right? You succeed, but you get the complication. Success just succeeds. And then a complete success is not only to succeed, but something even better happens. And we have a box text about moving the story forward, which I'm guessing is kind of like your fail forward type thing. Okay, so now on to the modifiers. Okay, the GM may grant a bonus to a check for a favorable circumstance or impose a penalty for a difficult circumstance. Other factors such as abilities, perks, and items may also modify a check, but a check can never have a more than a +3, cumulative +3 or -3. A quest point, however, can always add 1 to the result of a check after the roll. That's cool. So you're going to have some kind of inspiration type thing that you can use to bump up if you really need to get a particular result. The one thing that's nice about that, I will say, is that it happens after the roll. So you don't need to sit there and say, I'm going to spend 4, and you don't know. Like, you can wait till it rolls and then decide how many of those quest points. We don't know how many you possibly could have, but you can kind of spend from there. So we've got, the max you can do is have either +3 or -3. Does that include other factors, abilities, perks? Okay, so I guess that's on top of skills. So I'm still going to guess that your skills are probably only going to be maybe a +1, maybe a +2. Well, let's read the example. Why am I wondering when I can just read? All right, Nerman the gnome wants to try and track down the Clunch dragon. He has a +3 wilderness skill, but suffers a -1 penalty for the dense terrain, bringing the check bonus down to +2. However, Epoli, the knight errant, successfully uses her inspiring orders ability to increase Nerman's check by +2. Mathematically, that would be a +4 bonus, but it's instead capped at +3. The max cumulative bonus for a check. When Nerman gets a result of 8, he can still use a quest point to make it a 9. Okay, right? So, makes sense. Interestingly, I guess for a family game, because this is, this won the 2025 ENNIE for a couple of different things. One of them was a family game. And it doesn't now, tonally and kind of what they're going for, I get it. I don't know if this is, they didn't say specifically, at least so far in the bits I've read, that this is for kids or whatnot. But it's interesting that this modifier bit, it's a little bit fiddly. It's not gonna say it's too fiddly, but there's a lot of, you're doing this kind of undo this, undo that, undo that. And I kind of feel like sometimes I really appreciate, especially in games that are trying to keep it I don't want to say light in tone necessarily, but just kind of keep it moving kind of thing. I have found that I appreciate the systems that have a way of baking that in a that can streamline it in a way where there's not a lot of back and forths. And saying to me, like, I got +2, but then it's -1. I got +3. Like, it's fine. And, I think we've all played those games and it's great. But at the same time, I could see if I was playing with my daughter or somebody and I'm trying to kind of keep it moving, that I'm going to kind of want to just like, let's just like, maybe not. And maybe that's just me as a referee or whatever they call the referee at Landavine. I'll just say referee and just be like, I'm not going to worry about dense, whatever. Right. I'm just going to let it fly kind of thing. So, but it's just interesting. Brian says, I think the system, or I get it. So sorry, Brian had 2 comments. Brian says, first, definitely getting notes of fiddle. And then secondly, I think the system doesn't necessarily match the whimsical lore from what I've skimmed over. I see. Yeah, so we'll have to keep a look at that because, we've got this idea of sort of whimsy that the game setting is, but then we have some things a little bit of, not a super crunch, but maybe a little more crunch than I was expecting kind of off the bat, right? So you're only rolling that D12, which is cool, but then there's definitely some kind of like, do these kind of up and down, sideways kind of bits before we get to a final numbers. But it is what it is. But we'll see how it goes. So we have notes about there's advantage and disadvantage. Not going to get into. We also have proficiencies and deficiencies. So a proficiency is a permanent advantage for a type of check or circumstance. For instance, hiding proficiency is just one aspect of the sneak skill. A PC would gain advantage only when doing something that involves hiding, not when moving around quietly. Okay. And then deficiencies are the reverse, where you get permanent disadvantages. So, for example, heavy armor imposes a deficiency on sneak. So on top of this stuff, you get the advantage and disadvantage thrown in. So there's definitely, on the one hand, you do get a lot of leverage to pull as the GM for moderating stuff. But now we're adding a little bit more on top of it. Okay, so you're doing those modifiers. Now it's, all right, am I doing 1 die? Am I doing 2 dice? Am I doing 2 dice against? And there doesn't seem, I don't know, that presumably the idea here is you probably wouldn't have advantage and disadvantage running at the same time, but maybe you would, because if you got the sneak skill, but you happen to be wearing heavy armor, you could potentially have advantage and disadvantage together, and I'm not sure. I would just have them cancel out, but I don't see a note here as to what you do if you have multiple levels. I mean, I guess, right, that was what you classically, right? You cancel it out? I don't know. Let's see. Brian says, maybe the contrast in my head is that the artwork and logline makes me think this is a beginner RPG friendly, but it seems like it'd be best for a group that has some experience. Yeah. But so here's the thing, right? We have to separate who's running it from who's playing it. If I am running it as a referee and I'm running it for my daughter who's 11 and she and her friends, a couple of friends of hers, are the players, I could absorb some of this crunch and just run the numbers in the background and then tell them, and then kind of have that go. It's like that. Now, the only issue is that these modifiers, where they're working, you have to be kind of player front facing with them, because I think we want them to know, like, I want the teamwork aspect to come out. So this idea, the example they gave of Nurm and the gnome and hiding, the fact that it's difficult and is going to make it harder, I want them to know, maybe not the modifiers, but I want them to know, like, okay, this is going to be harder. And that then encourages, let's say, her friend to come in and say, oh, but I've done this to kind of help mitigate that difficult circumstance. So you want them to kind of know, but you can maybe keep the numbers to yourself and just have them roll the die. Though and I don't want to sidetrack, but I'll do a separate thing on this. I got to play another one shot of the One Ring, and one of the things I felt like with the One Ring was, when I was looking up the combat rules, they're also using a D12 plus some other dice that you can roll, and you have this target number that's set. And I think it's really helpful to have that set target number. Oh, I just have to beat my kind of score, and then I know what I did. But then there's also modifiers that you as a player are not necessarily aware of. So you get this kind of weird, I don't want to say dissonance, but it's a little bit like, I think in that sense, if you're going to make it player facing, that kind of threshold number or target number, then I think it maybe works best when the referee, the GM, the lore master, whoever, is also kind of making it up front, so you could just kind of get an idea. And last night, it wasn't always clear, like, what the modifier is going to be or whatever. And I just felt like, well, if you're going to have it kind of facing, have the whole thing facing, so we can kind of do it sort of easy. And so this, in similar ways, you want at least the modifiers to be facing so that they can deal with them, but then you want to kind of maybe keep the math on your side of the GM screen, I would guess. Right? So you could probably sort that. Now, if it's going to be my daughter and her friends who are running and playing this together, it may, I don't know. This might not be the first. I'm thinking, like, just in this part, I'm like, I don't know if I want this to be their first game, unless I'm going to be the teacher and then teach them over a session and then let them loose, which is totally fine, right? It's totally do it. But yeah, it's got some things going on, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because as you're getting in the game, and it's kind of nice when you know your game has levels to go to, and you can kind of add that complexity. And maybe you start off not doing it, and then you start adding it in. So it's nice that it has that. It can kind of help with the depth, but yeah, that also has a little bit of that, not barrier to learning, but just a little bit of resistance to figuring things out, because there's more moving bits. Oh, Brian says they've got a Vagabond RPG. Oh, interesting. I'd love to see it, Brian. But I haven't heard of Vagabond. But yeah, I'd love to take a look at that. Okay, back to this. So we have target numbers now. Some abilities and situations might call for checks that use a larger target number and a simple pass-fail mechanic. This is usually described as as on a 6+, meaning if the result is 6 or greater, the check succeeds. On the flip side, on a 5- means if the result is 5 or less, the check fails. Okay, so basically, if you just want to have a flat pass-fail, you can kind of do that. Now, they didn't say what die this uses. Is this? I guess this is using the D12, which means it seems like you're actually getting a little bit of a bump to your success. But obviously, you can also set the target number to what you want. So if you want it to be really tough, set it to 12. Helping an ally. A PC can help another PC. All right, so we got help, and they can get a bonus. That's great. Okay, so here we have a box text on who makes the check. And the only reason is because they mentioned here that, unlike in most other games, it seems like this game is suggesting that the players can kind of make a check. Like they said it, right? You can make a check proactively. I want to roll a check to hide or something, which is not generally how we're running. Most games kind of, and I certainly have, at least with the kind of your sort of D&D-ish games, I definitely frown upon. I want to be able to GM. We'll talk about what you're going to roll, and it can be a discussion, but I don't want a player going, I just do this and just kind of roll dice to make a check that nobody asked for, kind of thing. But here's what they say here. Sometimes it makes sense for each PC in a party to make a check to determine their individual outcomes in the face of danger. For instance, how does each PC fare? Oh, this is different. So sorry. This is more like who in the party makes a check. I see. Okay. Different question. However, when it comes to things like searching a room, recalling lore, fixing broken machinery, or even persuading a guard, only one check should generally be allowed. Why? Because dice rolls should move the story forward, and each check should resolve fully, leading the narrative in a new direction. So basically, you shouldn't just be able to spam checks. And the idea here is, which I totally agree with, is that you try to pick the lock. If you fail to pick the lock, something should happen, and that changes the situation. And now that doesn't mean necessarily that another person can't come along and also try to pick the lock. But the something that changes should mean that the world isn't as it just was. Maybe a loud noise, maybe you hear something and something's gone wrong, maybe the lock has just gotten jammed up. Something's gone on to change it. So it's just not we can just sit here and spend forever just rolling to pick this lock, because essentially there's no consequence. Like everything should have consequences, and those consequences should be enough to at least give you pause or make you want to rethink the situation, as opposed to just lining up for everybody to take a turn, kind of thing. All right, limited outcomes. Because dice results follow a chart, sometimes it's useful for the GM to define the limits of success before players make the check. Doing so helps the GM interpret the result and keeps the game fair. This is particularly useful if a PC's attempted course of action just logically wouldn't turn out the way they hope from a GM's perspective. I mean, I kind of think this shouldn't just be done sometimes. It should pretty much always be, which is you figure out what the possible results are before you start rolling dice, right? And this kind of gets that issue like, I'm going to roll a persuasion check on the king, and then if you make the check, you succeed, or like I crit success, so the king hands me his crown, and now I am king, right? And you're like, that was never going to happen. But the player, you want to make sure that you, the referee, and the player are kind of on the same page, so that there's no disappointment or frustration when the player thinks that when they succeed on this thing, the results are going to be up here, and here's the GM going, it's really going to be down here. So you figure that out before you roll dice. And I don't even think that should be a sometimes. It pretty much should be all the time. I would say you can even state it, even if something like picking a lock. Like, hey, if you pick the lock and you succeed, you're going to open, the door's going to open, and it's going to be fine. And then you could say, like, look, if you pick the lock successfully, but you get that complication, you're probably going to make some noise, or something else is going to go wrong, and that could potentially alert enemies right down the line. Adversaries, you'll make a disturbance that is noteworthy. And then you can say, if you crit success, you're going to open the lock completely silently. And you could just give that, so the player, like, okay, so they sort of understand. And I think it's something you can do with pretty much all the checks. It only takes a minute. I mean, I just did it in 30 seconds. Like, okay, this is what's going on. Great, let's do that. Because then they might change their mind. They might be like, well, we really don't want to make noise, and I'm really not a great lock pick, so maybe we should go outside and see if there's some other way in, or whatever it is they decide to do. So it's probably always good to just align on the expectations before you roll dice. Okay, playing the game. I'm not going to really get into this too much, right? I think We understand. There is a thing on the player's rule here of the yes and principle. Cooperate with your fellow players and support their ideas. Build on what they say instead of refuting or ignoring it. I really like this, and not necessarily because they included yes and, but what I like about this is it's in the player's side of it. Because too often this only gets thrown up to the GM. It's kind of that kind of rule of cool thing, like, oh, you should always be yes anding. Rule of cool, dude. Rule of cool. And if you think that's true, then that's fine. I think that I'm not anti-rule of cool necessarily, but I think too many times that just becomes people just use that and it's like there's no more discussion. Just rule of cool, end of story. And I don't think that's the case. But by putting it on the player side, you're saying, hey, look, we're playing this as a game, and your other players, you're all in it to do the thing, but also just to have fun. And it stinks when one player has to do something or trying to do something, and then they're not supported. And other players, they ignore it or maybe even undermine it or something else. And this is saying, hey, don't undermine it. Play with it. And of course, the other side of it is obviously if you're a player, don't do something that nobody else is a fan of and kind of disrupt things and expect people to follow you. Then maybe that should be something else. Is, hey, also play, keep the spirit of what's going on, the spirit of the game, the spirit of the group before you just go off and do it. But, help out your favorite players, and then they will, presumably that gets returned and then you also get supported. Okay. I'm not going to really go through the attributes, right? So we have vim, vigor, knack, and know-how. I think you can figure out in your brains what that means. So those are the attributes. Then we have these stats. What the heck is the difference between stats and attributes? Okay, so these are more... Okay, so I guess it's like your to hit. So right, attack would be kind of your to hit. So if your attributes, like to use a D&D example, if strength adds a bonus to you then get a to hit bonus of +2 if you have high strength. And here that would probably be, I don't know. No, it would be, let's see, vigor would maybe, vigor generates your attack. So the stats are courage, attack, defense, quest points, and inventory slots. So these are the things that are going to kind of, some of them are just dependent on another stat. Like vigor attack comes straight from vigor. But some of these other ones are just calculated. It's calculated from your attributes and maybe other stuff. Now the quest points, they represent a PC's adventuring savvy, will to succeed, and perhaps a bit of luck. So they start out equal to your know-how, but you get 3 additional, and you get them at the start of each session, and you could spend them to use once every session abilities or perk in an additional time in a session. I see. So okay, so we get I'm stumbling over here. We're getting some few things. So obviously what we can say is we're going to get some abilities you can use once every session, right? Session abilities. Or perks. I'm guessing they mean that both the abilities and the perks are once every session. And once you've done one and you want to do one again, you can spend a quest point to do it again. And then, of course, as we also noted, you can spend one to get a +1 to the result of a check after rolling. Can you only get a +1 or could you spend multiple ones to get multiple +1s? I'm going to say you could probably spend multiples at once. We don't know. What are you rolling here? So the modifiers you can get are only +2, +1, 0, and -1. So you can definitely get a -1 to your attributes. I would really think I would definitely not want the -1 on know-how. I feel like those quest points seem like they're pretty darn good. So I would if you can either have a +2 in know-how and get 5 quest points, that seems like a good deal. But we don't know what the abilities are and perks. So maybe I shouldn't be too quick, but that seems really strong. And then you get inventory slots. Let's see. Are they doing anything special with inventory slots? So you get 20 plus your might plus your vitality. Maybe we're just doing simple slots, which is fine. I really do appreciate, and I'm not someone. I've definitely, as I've gotten older, I feel like I don't need the complicated coin weight, stone weight. I think you can get a good approximation of that stuff using some kind of slots or other things. I think it's totally good. There's just more. I don't feel like the extra math. Like I imagine, I've seen where you could take a thing with a slot system and then you could do it in coin weight or whatever weight or stone or whatever, and they're not that different. You don't end up in such a different place, and if it skews maybe more to the player's favor, it's fine. Oh my gosh, they got to carry 2 more things that they didn't get to carry. If they were, it's like, I don't care. I don't care. I feel like my approach right now is, does it seem reasonable if I'm squinting and looking at it? I don't want them to look like that guy from Baron Munchausen that's taken the entire, what was I forget the character's name, who basically gets this entire treasury and just in a sack on the back and pulls it out. But I also, so I don't want that. If it just seems kind of reasonable, okay, I got a few things. All right, I'm fine with that. That's kind of where I am now. And if being reasonable but being a little bit abstract saves me some just brain cycles and whatever, then I'm fine to go with that kind of thing. All right, skills. So we've got, I'm just going to kind of throw them out really quickly. Charm, inspire, mettle, perception, athletics, intimidate, might, vitality, nimbleness, search, sneak, trickery, lore, realms, tinker, and wilderness. Charm, inspire. Oh, I see. Hold on. There, so there was primary and thematic. So we're getting some of that are going both way in both categories. So maybe I need to read. Maybe I need to read the intro stuff. All right. So what are they saying? Skills represent a specific focus or aspect of an attribute. Okay. Skills are improved individually with XP. All right. So we're not. It's probably not. It seems like there's no leveling system, but you're just going to kind of increase your skills. Some skills are grouped together thematically outside of their respective attributes. Okay. Okay. I got you. So it's the same skill list. So the skill list I read, first of all, is the same. I was reading them off from the primary skill categories, which basically breaks them down into which skills align with which attributes. So there's, so the skills that are Vim related, which is your charisma and intuition, charm, inspire, mettle, and perception, right? And then vigor, and then knack, and then know-how. So each one of the attributes corresponds to a set of the skills. But then there's also, they give it to you in categories. So skills that are social versus skills that are movement versus skills that are physical versus skills that are mental. All right. So they're not separate. They're just different ways to categorize. I wonder I'm curious as to, not that it's bad to categorize them, because then you can kind of eyeball them quickly. And if you're in a social situation, you can kind of look at the social skills. But I'm curious as to if there's any other reason to group them together. And let's see, it says some skills are grouped together thematically outside their respective attributes. Rules in the game sometimes refer to social, movement, physical, and mental checks or skills. All right, so that might mean then that you could pick which one you want. So, hey, make a movement check means that you could use athletics, nimbleness, or sneak. And some of them also, okay. Because I'm looking here now at thematic, and there's overlap within those things. So, movement athletics is in movement, athletics is also in physical, as is nimbleness. So all the movement skills are also in the physical skills. I'm not sure if I would put sneak in the movement skills. I mean, it is kind of movement. I guess it would be, if you're trying to, hey, you got to run across something. I don't know that the sneak would do it as opposed to the other athletics or nimbleness, but if you can make the argument, I guess I would go with it. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Xnard Prime asks, have I done a video review of Flextail Hexcrawl Toolkit? I don't think I have, unless I did it ages and ages ago, and I've done a lot. So it doesn't ring a bell offhand, but that doesn't mean I didn't do it. But it doesn't sound. I don't think I have. So I will try to check that out afterwards. So I appreciate the question. I don't think I have. It sounds like it's right up my alley, so I probably should. So let me figure out if I can get a hold of it and then check back in, and I will try to get something on that. So thanks for letting me know. Ian says if you're treating sneak as a mode of movement, like sneak, normal, fast. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it can make sense in some ways. It's not a big deal, ultimately, right? This is another one of those things where especially as I kind of... As I mature, 50-year-old man, I'm still maturing. As my things mature, I tend to not get as hung up on some of these things. Like I note them, like, okay, it's interesting that if you had to, if a check had you like run across this thing before, run across the bridge that's falling down, I can see athletics for sure. I can see nimbleness for sure. Sneak, not so much. But I'm at a point, where I probably go, if someone's like, can I use sneak? I might be how or something, and then maybe just do it, and not get too caught up. It's close enough probably that I just probably hand wave it away. But maybe that's just maybe I might just say for that, the flip side is as a GM, I just don't say a general movement one. As I say, give me athletics or nimbleness. But I mean, I'm also the kind of person that would be like, hey, you got to get across. Tell me how you do it, and you can come up with a check. And if you can come up with a way to use your perception to get across a mental skill, I totally do that. So probably where I am now as a referee is I don't even, for the most part, I don't need those because I'll say to you, you tell me how you want to tackle that, and then we'll figure out what the check is. And if you want to say, I'm going to use my perception to look for the bridge is falling, but I'm going to be looking to see which planks and whatever, you know what I mean? However it's working, and I can do it to hop around, I'm like, okay, we'll do that. If you can sell me on it, then sell me on it. And then I think we'll naturally filter out a lot of bad things anyway, because people aren't going to want to choose stuff they stink at. And I think everyone, people playing good faith aren't going to try to say, I want to use charm on the bridge. I was like, how is that going to work? But if they come up with some kind of crazy explanation, then more, kudos to them. We would roll on it. Oh, okay. So just off topic on Flextail, it's a series. Oh, cool. Oh, they had a recent bargain. Oh, nice. Well, thanks for letting me know, Xnard Prime. I will definitely check into that. Okay, so we got our skills. I don't think any of those. I'm kind of curious what metal is. Or it's just inner fortitude and willpower. Okay. Hey, we got a nice thing. And I like that. I'm not going to read through these, but I do like that they give you examples. Kind of, hey, this is what we mean. Oh, what is realms? Oh, it's just knowledge of locations and cultures. I like that. Oh, it's a cute picture. It's like so at the bottom of this picture, we've got not the Iron Giant per se, but kind of looks like some kind of steampunky robot or maybe a golem taking a nap. I don't know if it's deactivated or just sleepy-eyed. And then a rangery looking or sort of light, fightery human guy approaching it. It's a cute picture. I like it. Okay, abilities are kind of what makes them unique. So we have class abilities and perks. We have classes. Folk perks, I'm guessing that's kind of your species, or we would say race in the old BX days. So when you're using abilities, you have to state your intentions. When you make a skill check or using an ability, players should first state what they are proposing to happen or become true before rolling the dice. I think that's, yes, always do that. I am trying to do this via that. This is what I think is going to happen. So we have the ability terminology, I'm going to breeze through these. Once every session, once every combat, each session. Oh, okay. So the difference between once every session and each session is that the each session ones cannot be, you can't use quest points to do them again. So they are only once per session. I wonder if that's a kind of, we'll see how they're used, but maybe only once or some other stronger term thing. Because it could be, it almost seems like these should be reversed, once every session versus each session. I don't know. Yeah, it's, you just get used to the terminology, but it's an interesting way to phrase that. But basically, those you cannot use quest points. Once and only once on a 6+. All right, so we just covered that. I think it's your rolling. I think everything's a 12-sided die, right? Well, yeah, they showed other dice in their picture, but everything seems to be basically 12-sided die. But interestingly, they didn't say specifically that it is the 12, but I'm going to assume that's what they mean, unless like I said, I could have missed it on the test. Okay, so on a 6+ is the most common one, but some might be on a 9+, and some might be on a 5-. All right, well, that might be interesting. So we have a hit, instant action. You can do it, and it doesn't count as an action. And we say NPCs, adversaries. Yeah, we got that adversary classes and a hex cluster. A few abilities affect an area called a hex cluster, which is a hex on the map and all its surrounding hexes. Wow, that sounds pretty powerful. I don't know how big a hex is, but anything that's surrounding the hex and surrounding hexes, pretty cool. Okay, the Bard. So here are our classes. The Bard, Dungeoneer, the Gnome. Oh, interesting. So just on the gnome, in the land of Eem, gnomes may appear cute and harmless, but they are in fact some of the most powerful beings in existence. Protectors of nature and chroniclers of the old ways. Gnomes are the only class also doubling as their character's folk. Gnomes wield magic. know about the world, are in tune with nature. I don't think I've seen this before. Well, I know I can't say that because classic D&D had human classes and then the demi-humans. But this one's interesting, where you have separation of folk and class, but then you have one where you're doing, which I guess is kind of cool, and no reason why you couldn't do that. Which I like it. It's kind of just like an example of just you could be flexible, right? This, imagine you're playing a game like, well, I mean, the white box is like this too, right? If you wanted to play a dragon, I guess it's not even new. I'm just thinking of it as novel, but it's not, because the white box, it was like, well, you could be a Balrog or a dragon. In that case, you wouldn't be a dragon plus a fighter. You would just be a dragon. Because in the white box, your species and your class were separate. But something like a dragon, the dragon would be both your species and your class for that. And then your progression would be unlocking and increasing your dragonness until you reached kind of typical dragon or whatever creature it was. But I haven't seen it in kind of more modern things. It seems like it always goes, either everything is kind of species as class except for humans usually, or nothing. So it's a reminder that, hey, you can mix and match the stuff if it suits your setting and what you're trying to do. Other classes are the Knight Errant, the Loyal Chum, and the Rascal. The Loyal Chum as a class? That's interesting. So the Loyal Chum, they're reliable and true. A loyal chum is the quintessential ally and travel companion. Their contributions may sometimes go unnoticed, but they're the backbone of any adventuring party, always there to lend a hand or helpful advice. Loyal chums, I'm sorry, this is funny to me, are the party's glue, boosting their allies and always useful in a pinch. Okay, so they're it is a support class. It's really interesting. I don't know how I feel about that. Some classes have great support potential. I think thieves, your rogues, are like that. Where very often they're doing things that support the party, but it's they're doing a lot of stuff, like they're unlocking the locks, and it's kind of helpful for the whole party kind of thing. They're sort of supporting folks. I guess clerics, or maybe even more than thieves, with their healing potential. They're kind of helping others do stuff, but even with clerics, I don't feel like they're. I guess at a certain point, healing became kind of their big deal. But I mean, a first level cleric, and BX doesn't even have heal yet, but they've got magic. They can turn undead. They can get in the front line. They can kind of do a bunch of stuff. Ian says, you don't want to be the Samwise Gamgee of the troop. Yeah, it's not so much that I don't want to be. I don't know if I want to be that as my class. Like, to me, that's a choice I make as a player. Like, hey, I'm going to be a supportive, because you can do that with any class. Like, I can be a magic user. Say, I'm going to do my magic user. I mean, obviously, everyone should be trying to benefit the whole party anyway. But certainly, as a fighter, let's say, I can play defensively, and instead of trying to run up for glory, I can say, I'm going to guard the line to support the guys behind me doing the thing. Or I'm going to be the magic user, and instead of fireballing stuff, I'm going to take all these other spells, like whatever they are, protection, protection from. I think those are more cleric spells, right? I'm going to use my bless and protection from evil and all this stuff. And maybe the magic user, I'm going to cast invisibility and stuff, but not on myself. I'm going to support. I don't know that I need it codified into the class. It literally, like, you are the support person. So that's kind of it's an interesting choice. And obviously, you don't have to play the class, but it's just kind of funny that they just like, you are literally a support class. That's why I find it's interesting. Oh, Elder Goblin Games says. Give me a sec. Yeah, what is going on? Okay. Weird. All right. Never mind. We're back. I'm not sure what happened there. YouTube's told me I just went dark there. So yeah, better. I don't know what happened. I didn't do anything. I literally did nothing. It just, all of a sudden went like no data, and then data returned. But everything else was showing up. So I don't know. Good to be back. Okay. So what was I saying? I'm totally down with support, being the support person. Like I said, it's Brian says solar flare plus tariffs equals brownout. Yeah, maybe. I mean, but nothing else went out. Like, obviously, if my computer had gone dark, that would have been more than 10 seconds. But yes, whatever it is. Okay. So anyway, support roles. I'm down with them. It's just interesting to codify it as a class. Is kind of the interesting bit here. Now, I'll say this, and I think I almost feel like there is an interesting tension here between the crunchiness and kind of stuff going on in the system, and then this other part, which is kind of like showing the kind of, I don't know, sort of, I don't say family friendliness, but maybe beginner friendliness, is I do think that having a class, so I'll say this, as much as I go, someone going like, I don't know if I need the class telling me you are the support class. However, I could see someone who's maybe coming into as a new gamer and and maybe they're a little bit shy, or I don't even know, because I don't know how the class works yet, but I could see being able to say like, okay, you're going to help everybody else, and you could give that to somebody, and they immediately kind of understand, and it's not, and they kind of, you're taking that class because you want that, and you understand it from the jump that that's your thing, because it's literally telling you up front. It is not something where you're taking the cleric and you feel like you're one thing and everyone else is looking at like, you should be doing that. Right? You see that with the cleric. My cleric doesn't heal. What's wrong with them? And it's like, well, maybe they don't want to heal. Maybe they want to use their other things. Like they didn't sign up necessarily to be your heal fountain, your fountain of healing. And this one, at least, is like, hey, I picked the chum because I want to do that. And if I don't want to do that, then I just don't pick the chum if I don't want to handle it. So I can see both ends of it. And not to say it doesn't work. It's just something for me. It's just kind of, it's an interesting thing. And then the rascal looks like you're kind of thiefy type. Elder Goblin Games says, it is a game that seems to want heavy narrative power alongside some mechanical crunch. Yeah, and it's an interesting choice, particularly for a game. And this is hard to say because, I don't feel like the game has come out and said, well, this is a kid-friendly game. But they won the ENNIE for best family game, and maybe I'm just letting that. I should probably put the ENNIE's thing out. Put it out there, because they didn't really, I don't know if they campaigned for it, whatever. They didn't, that's kind of on the side there. I think it's a game that I might look at and say, do I want to have kids and play with kids? And the theming and stuff says yes. Some of the other crunch is like, okay, I'm going to need to manage that myself, or I need to figure out some way to filter it if I don't want the kids, if I don't feel like my kids or whoever it is ready for the crunch. So that the chum works, the loyal chum works on that, hey, this is something I can give to somebody if they want to play the thing, and it's just really clear about what it is, kind of thing, right? But then the other part of me is going like, but I have this other thing that's kind of crunchy, and like I can be anybody and be supportive. I don't need to be a class to be supportive. Whew. All right. Brian says, my wife doesn't cook. What's wrong with her? My cleric doesn't heal. What's wrong with them? Yeah. Brian also says, those folks need to work on some things about expectations of others. Yes. Oh, Elder Goblin Games said they had him on the podcast, said this was not targeted at kids, the other Kickstarter games. Okay, well, I'm not familiar with their other game, but got you on that. So I'll put away my kid expectations. I think, again, I saw like ENNIE, they won the ENNIE Award for Best Family Game. And I think there's lots of leg of this from a family aspect, but I'm going to put the kid stuff aside because yes, inside, regardless of what the wrappings may appear, this is not a, I would say, like what are they, they call board games like my first Catan, I probably wouldn't say this is my first RPG. I think I would be most comfortable if I was running this knowing stuff. I don't know if I'd want to give this to, not that they couldn't, but they're probably with other systems I might want to say, here, it's a little bit simpler, kind of wrap your brain around before we get to this stuff going on. And maybe I should try to get them on stream to talk about it. Okay. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch on XP, but we have questing XP, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. You complete a quest. So it's actually, maybe I should read it. So you get questing XP when you complete a quest, encounter a new creature, have a significant NPC encounter, solve a problem in a creative way, get into peril hijinks, travel 10 or more hexes, explore a new location or point of interest, find a magic item or relic, or craft an item. All right, so we can see we have, crafting is a thing. Obviously, exploring is a thing. Traveling is a thing. I think these are all good. I think the have a significant NPC encounter, I always pause at those because I just don't like where I have to decide as a GM what's significant or not. I just prefer if it would just say, I don't know, some other aspect. But I presume they try to mean that, like, you don't go to the shopkeeper and someone's like, okay, I got questing XP because I met it. I did some shopping, right? That doesn't that doesn't count, but audience with the king might count. Does it count every time you go to the king? Probably, I might say like I don't know, right? I think you can figure it out, but I just prefer when I don't have to do that figuring, just in terms again of that, or at least I would have to then sit down and set expectations like, hey, you get it for these kind of encounters with NPCs, but not these other ones, that we're not having arguments about whether talking to the street urchin that's hanging out on the corner is worth questing XP. But this is a pretty good list. I like that. So then you have role playing XP. And this is going to come from stories, which we haven't seen yet, character stories. And you build on a relationship, pursue a personal quest, demonstrate an ideal, demonstrate a flaw, get into trouble with your folk quirk, or tell an important story or reveal a significant truth about their past. So I got some interesting things there. You can do that. Oh, I should also say that you're done at the end of each session. You start awarding these out. So you're going to get only, who knows how many of these, but probably not a bunch, right? But also you're going to level up. Looks like at least you're going to get to mid-levels pretty quick, because encountering new creatures, critters, or creepers is probably going to come up fairly quickly. Peril and hijinks, I presume you're going to get into. So at least when you're starting out, you're going to be able to get a couple of questing XP, explore new locations, point of interest. I mean, I could see in a single, you're going to be able to get to second level. Second level only requires 4 experience points. So that's a no-brainer. Your first session, not session 0, but actually playing, you're going to be able to get to second level, which I think is good. Get people a taste, because it's going to get harder as you go on, because encountering new things is going to get a little bit trickier as you're encountering stuff, right? You're going to have to travel more. You have to do more. You're going to have to sort of spread your wings. And I like the idea that you have this list, so that, like my thing of having it being kind of flair facing, so you can kind of pick and choose what you want to do. This gives you that, because you can see, and of course you can always talk to GM about what some of these might mean. And then, so then once you've got some XP, you can spend them. So I guess they do have levels. So I was thinking they didn't have levels right before when I said you're doing your skills, but I guess you do have levels. So, all right, leveling up. Each level must be bought individually. Level 2 costs 4, level 3 costs another 8, and so on, right? So you have to get to 4, and then it's not. So when you look at you get 4 XP, now you need 8, not an additional 4 to get to 8, right? You need a full 8, what they're saying. Okay, so now you've done that. Let's see, when you're improving skills, each skill rank must be bought individually, increasing from 0 to 1 costs 4, from 1 to 2 costs 8, so on. So that means that you're gonna have to kind of track your available. So there's another interesting wrinkle, is you're getting levels. So I'm kind of wondering here, hold on a minute. Leveling up, each level must be bought. And then skill ranks must be bought. But what is the difference? Each stat boost can only be taken one time. After reaching level 10, PCs can spend 40 XP to gain an additional ability from the previous level. This can be done from a previous level. This can be done multiple times. I guess we're going to have to see, because it seems like, so you're going to be tracking your level, which I guess is going to have your class abilities tied to your level, but then your skills, you're going to have to keep. So what I'm saying is you're going to have to keep your XP, you're going to have to track your lifetime XP gain, because that's, or no, I guess you don't track it lifetime. You're going to have to track that, but then you're going to have to track your XP for leveling purposes, but you're also going to have to keep a pool of your XP that you're spending to improve stuff, which I'm presuming you don't have to spend all at once. You can hold on to them. So you might have I earned 12 XP, so I made level 4, but I actually have, let's say, 20 XP because I held on to 8 XP from levels going to 1 to 2. If that makes sense. You're going to have to kind of do a double tracking, which I'm not, it seems a little fiddly, but obviously it's doable. It's only a couple of currency things, but it's kind of an interesting that you're having both, because usually when I see hey, you're buying your sort of increases, then you get rid of the class leveling. But in this case, they're giving us both, which is cool, because it's more kind of stuff you get to play with, and more ways you can, if you like the character generation, character build kind of situation, this kind of feeds in that. At the same time, it does add something more, and I'm curious, is the juice worth the squeeze for that? But we'll find out. So we got the cost for improving skills. We have the cost for boosting up your stats, but remember, you can only do those one time. And then you can have a slower. So if you want to do a slower progression, basically you can change the XP cost for each level. So if you find the normal leveling up, which I guess they are trying to make it be fairly zippy, hey, you want to slow it down, you can slow it down. So basically, with slowing it down, essentially it's instead of going in 4s, for the most part, you're going in 6s and then jumping up to from to 10 to 15 to 20. So you end up at level 10, it's going to take you 90 XP on the slower one, it takes you 60 on the regular one. Okay, so character creation steps. Think about your concept, select your class, assign your modifiers, tweak your skills, determine your stats, select your folk, select your homeland, and develop your character story. So the interesting thing here, not good or bad, just interesting, is that you pick your folk at the end or towards the end of it, not up front, which I think is kind of interesting. I guess there's no right way to do it, right? Because but I guess the idea here is that you're supposed to kind of have your concept in mind. Really, the first thing you do is you're going looking at everything and figuring out what you want to do, and then you're kind of putting it together. But you're picking your class first before your folk is kind of interesting. I'm sure people do that anyway, but I usually go the other way. If I'm not playing something where your class and your folk are one and the same, like BX. All right, they have a little box text in session 0. That's cool. Character sheets. I like that they give you the QR code that takes you right there and the link, which is cool. And they have it in multiple spots, which is also cool. And now they have this breakdown of what everything is, which I'm gonna skip because I don't have a character sheet on hand. So the Bard has perks, Invigorate and Battle Songs. Invigorate twice a session. And then Battle Songs, let's see, what does this say? The Bard's music can also be epic and thrilling, making for a great fight soundtrack. During combat, the Bard's instrument counts as a ranged weapon and inflicts non-lethal dread that can't be blocked by armor. That's cool. And the interesting thing, I guess there's the two interesting things. I don't know what dread is yet. I don't think we've seen dread, what it is, but I'm guessing is that what damage is called? Is damage called dread? Is that what they're calling it? Oh yeah, it must be, right? Play a Bard if you want to be charismatic, creative, and the party healer. Your courage is 12 plus your vim, and your dread is a d4. So dread must be damage. So you're right, they're softening the whole thing, right? You're not inflicting harm necessarily, you're inflicting dread. Which also plays into the kind of lighthearted tone, right? You're not necessarily killing people, but you're filling them with dread, and then things can happen when they've gotten more dread than they can handle. And your courage, right, is your health. So we're not talking about physically hurting you. We're talking about your courage going down. You're losing courage. So I guess the thing that's neat there, so just that whole part is neat. And then the other part that's neat is that usually with the Bard stuff, it's about supporting, right? It's that support class of, I'm supporting my, and I guess it really depends on your version of Bard, because maybe now, and I don't even know what the modern Bard's supposed to be, but not necessarily supporting, but you have that in supporting part, right? The Invigorate. But then they also give you that which outside of combat, you're supporting your teammates, you can use Invigorate. But inside of combat, your battle song isn't invigorating your teammates, it's actually going against it is an attack against the enemy, which is pretty cool. So you're beating of the drums not to help your allies make attacks, but you're literally striking fear in a sense into the enemy, which is a cool twist. A little bit of a twist on it. You choose your instrument, and then you have some talents, musician, storyteller, or performer. And then you have some abilities. So these are the ones that are linked to the level of your class. So narrator is level 1. Little ditty. And then we have level 2. Good news. Wow, you got a lot going on. So like I said, I need to get through a bunch of these. And I don't know. I might have to split it up between this stream, just finishing up this mechanics stuff. We haven't gotten to combat and some of the other things, and then hitting the setting maybe tomorrow. So you got narrator, little ditty. Okay, good news. Yeah, I'm not going to read all these, but you have a bunch of abilities. So these are locked to your level, your class level. So there's an interesting bit here where you get kind of, like I said, they're kind of merging. Well, I guess it's not that different from, say, 5e and other things that you get to add skills to, but you're spending to buy skills and you're also getting class level stuff. The Dungeoneer, and here we have the gloopy guy. Oh, you get an underling. So Dungeoneers have a named NPC underling, also known as an intern or rookie. The underling follows the Dungeoneer around and perhaps begrudgingly follows orders. Begrudging is good. They have +1 in one attribute and its associated skills, but -3 in everything else. That's great. They have 1 courage and won't participate in combat. If an underling suffers dread, they go on a break for the remainder of the session. That's awesome. So you can use them to do stuff, but they're not going to help you in combat. And I like the fact that if they happen to take damage or as a dread for some reason, that they go on break, which is great. Again, they're not gone. It's not like those things where you get the familiar and your familiar dies and you have to keep resummoning it. It's just great. It's like, I'm out of here, boss. But then they show back up later, which is really just kind of fun. Again, it's lighthearted, right? We're not worried about where they're going on break in the dungeon or anything. They're just gone, but they're going to come back. So if it happens at the beginning of a session, yeah, you're kind of disadvantaged a bit, but it's not permanent. You don't have to do anything crazy. You don't have to say, oh, I got to spend now 5,000 gold or I have to find some weird gem. It's like, no, they're coming back. So I like it. It's nice. It's quick, but they give you an extra set of hands that you can use to do something that's not fighting. And I love the fact that they're going to get to be good in one thing or decent in one thing and terrible at everything else, which means that you're going to get to kind of pick what you want them to be good at, and then they're going to be useless at everything else. Not to say you couldn't still use them, but -3 means that you're going to have to help them out a lot if you need them to do something outside of that one thing that they're actually, have a talent in. And I do like these little play these notes. It's not the first time I've seen it, but I do appreciate them. For the folks who are kind of newer to the hobby, play a Dungeoneer if you want to be a daring treasure hunter with tons of resources and an NPC crew. Oh, do you get more than one? That would be awesome at some point. Oh, you do. Let's say, well, here we go. Level 1 Dungeon Crew. A crew of plucky boggles or tiny gelatinous goos or mushrooms accompanies the Dungeoneer on expeditions. Even when thrust into danger, they comically never perish. Inspire or intimidate check once every session. Make the crew do something useful. They are especially good for distractions, menial labor, and triggering traps. Oh, that's really good. Triggering traps. Oh my gosh, that's funny. That is pretty hilarious. That's a nice twist on the, you don't go to disarm the trap. You send your little boggle or your goo or mushroom guy out, or gal or whomever out to do the thing. That's pretty great. But you do have to make the inspire or intimidate. So you either have to threaten them to do it or you need to inspire them to do it. But either way, it's not a done deal. But I'm guessing that, or at least the way I would rule it, is you have to make the check first and then you use your once per session. So it's not like you can only threaten them once. Once they, you have it until you actually do it. And one thing, I will say this, just as a formatting thing, they talked about before we got to reading these classes, these abilities and kind of the nomenclature. I wish they would bold some of the stuff, because I know that if I was wanting to reference Dungeon Crew, I'd like to know the frequencies and stuff, be able to find that quickly. And they don't, a lot of times you would see that the cost and whatnot would be underneath the name in a way that's just right there, like once per session, whatever. And I kind of wish they would have done that, or at least bolded it so that I could see, once every session or however it is, just so I can eyeball it quickly. Because I have a feeling that is probably going to be the thing. I'm going to get used to what it is. And it's kind of like, okay, well, I like to just have that so I can reference fast, quickly. Maybe they have a not Dungeoneer screen, like a referee screen or something that has some of that. Or, I'd want to put a reference sheet together if I were playing. Or maybe it's on their character sheet too. That could be another place. I don't know. But just from a format, I think it'd be nice to call that stuff out. Then we have a bunch of other things. You get a lot of abilities. All right, the gnome. Play a gnome if you want to wield magic, know about the world, and be in tune with nature. So it's kind of interesting. So they kind of merge the gnome folk, which is good because gnomes, I know a lot of folks don't like gnomes. I think Matt Finch famously was like, that doesn't allow gnomes, like finds them totally superfluous. I know a lot of people wonder, like, why do we need dwarves, halflings, and gnomes? And gnomes usually end up being the odd man out. So they kind of gave them their own little niche, which is making them basically the druid class, I'm guessing, which is cool. So with a gnome perk, you get to choose a hat. You can have a spring hat, which lets you mend something once every session. You have an autumn hat, which lets you change the color of something once every session. And you have a winter hat, which lets you warm something once a session. And they know I don't think you can do damage and make it hot. It's warming it up. So use it. Find a moment that makes sense. So you can use it either kind of in a role-playing way or maybe you can in a situational way. But, Brian says respect the gnomes. Indeed, respect the gnomes. Choose a bane. Ooh, did we see banes? I don't think no, there's choose gear. Okay, so what's the banes? Each gnome adventurer has earned a special title referencing their greatest victory against a particular adversary. However, the title is only displayed as a capitalized letter. For example, L. Nerman Fuddle stands for Lichbane Nerman Fuddle. The titles are a badge of honor, and because gnomes are so modest, rarely shared with others. Gnomes inflict 1d12 dread against their bane, and they start with an additional bane rival from their backstory. Choose one creature or critter from the adversaries or the bestiary to be the gnome's bane. Interesting. So that's kind of cool. They inflict d12 dread against their bane. So it's you get a little bit of that rangery kind of favored enemy sort of deal. Gnome abilities. Okay, then we get a bunch of. I'm not going to read the gnome abilities, but that's cool. The Knight Errant. Play a Knight Errant if you want to be a skilled fighter who rides a steed and leads others. Well, there you go. I want to ride steed and lead others. Your equipment, you can have a magnificent weapon, a magnificent breastplate, or a magnificent banner. The weapon one's kind of interesting. You get to choose a weapon and roll a random trait. I'm not sure, I'll have to see, is that a trait for the weapon or how does that work? I don't know. Hopefully we'll see. And then you get to choose a steed. It could be a Mucklin's pony, a Bagrillian tortoise, or a Zozo bird. Oh, so the bird, I'm guessing, doesn't get to fly. Yep, it's flightless, but it can leap up to 20 feet in any direction with a rider and safely glide from heights. All right, so that's cool. Wonder if there's anything. It doesn't say anything. Oh, let me read about the steed, because I'm just curious, because one of the issues with steeds and these kind of things that happens in your sort of ye old D&D type games is, one, when you're dungeon crawling, what are you doing with the horse? Or the other, whatever the steed is, even if it's a fantastic steed. And two, especially when they're horses, they tend to be vulnerable. So, I'm a knight and I got my special steed, but your steed doesn't have a lot, right? Your steed is not really, as a member of the party, isn't as sturdy as everyone else. They tend, they could die quickly. One fireball, you might survive, but your steed is ashes. And then you got to go through the whole thing of doing a steed again, or however that works. I think with paladins, maybe in their horses, I forget, like it can be a real pain in the butt to get another of these special steeds. So it's kind of like you got this thing, but because so much happens in dungeons and places where your steed is kind of not helpful, that kind of limits it a bit. And then the fact that they can be very vulnerable in ways that other party members aren't can also limit it in a way that it feels like you're kind of getting something. It's like your main feature, like, look, you can ride this horse. And then yet it's like, well, can I really ride the horse? Because a lot of times I'm not going to want to ride my special steed because it is so vulnerable. And then once we get to the dungeon, can I send the steed away? Is the steed just going to get killed while we're eaten while we're gone? Do I have to have people that, it just ends up being like, is what I'm getting out of it is supposed to be kind of fun and useful, actually equal to the amount of work and frustration that gets kind of baked in there. So for this game, every knight errant has a steed to ride the open road and carry them into battle. While mounted, a knight errant does not get tired from traveling. That's good. Outside of special abilities, steeds don't attack in combat, and nothing harms them except in extreme narrative circumstances, i.e. GM discretion. Due to the cramped nature of dungeons and the like, steeds will usually not enter and must be left outside. Brian says, just make them out invincible, limited utility, but invincible. And they've kind of done that. It is near invincible. So in extreme narrative circumstances, they can go down, but otherwise they're not going to. But you can't take them to dungeons. But it seems like I would treat them kind of like the underlings going on a break. They're going to go off and come back when you whistle, and they're not going to get hurt. That kind of makes it, I feel like, fair. And I would probably do that in kind of a BX type game. That this is your special horse with which you have a special relationship and a special bond and blah, blah, blah. And they're smarter than the average bear, and they're going to go off and they're going to find places to hide and they're not going to get eaten by wolves or whatever while you're gone. Other horses, yes. Your special horse, no. And let me just give myself a little tea refill for the working man. Ooh. Ah. Oh. Poppin' fresh dough. Okay. I definitely like these perks. I could see doing perks. Kind of adding a perk. All right, here we go. What we've all been waiting for. The Loyal Chum. Play a Loyal Chum if you want to be the party's glue, boosting allies and always useful in a pinch. All right, so what are their perks? So choose a best chum. Choose someone in the party to be a best chum and select one special best chum perk usable once every session. If, for whatever reason, the best chum leaves the adventuring party permanently, select a new best chum. All right. So you can lighten the mood, which is you can say something funny or kind to heal the best chum. You can take the hit and you can suffer dread that's meant for your best chum, or share the load, suffer the consequences of the best chum's failed check. All right, so this really seems like this is the class. I feel like this class is for like, hey, I'm playing with, and again, I know this was made for kids, but I'm playing with somebody. Let's say I'm playing the game with my daughter. Someone else is running it, and I want to basically help them. And I'm like, you know what? I don't need to be the center, or even really. I really want it to be my daughter's story, and what I'll do is I'll be my daughter's best bud, and she can be whomever, and I will do the stuff. That seems like a pretty neat little, I don't want to say safety net, but yeah, you can just kind of like, hey, you know what? I want them to play, and I don't want them to suffer, or I want to be able to basically lighten their load or let them do stuff, and then it not maybe come back on them so much. So I can kind of absorb some of that. So lay that stuff on me. And then my daughter gets to kind of have fun. And then we can have fun with the fact that I'm taking the heat for them, Because it's interesting that the best chum, it isn't party-wide. You pick one of these other player characters, and it's just for them until they leave. So it's not like, at the end of a session, I can pick a new one. I mean, maybe if you were running the game, you could say that you could, but, literally you're picking a particular individual in your group is your best chum, and they are your best chum until they skedaddle. Brian says, Loyal Chum is a good mitigator for solo play, possibly as a bud rolling around with a hero. Yeah, you could do that too. Yeah, if you were playing this solo, or you were playing this like Lone Wolf, you could have an NPC Loyal Chum, where I could definitely see it. Like, this is another good one, I think, to Brian's point, I think is a really good one, is if I was playing this with let's say I was running this, but just for my daughter by herself, the Loyal Chum could be like, hey, you have this other person, and then I could let my daughter say, if you want, you can, at certain points, have the same, I would just let her basically control the chum's perk, which also would be cool. So I'm just curious about this one thing about this perk. Choose someone in the party, to be a best chum, and select one special best chum perk usable once every session. Oh, I see. The other thing it's interesting is you only get to pick one of these that you can use every session. My first read of it, because I wasn't reading it closely, was thinking you could do any one of these once per session, but you can only do one of them. So you can either kind of be a healer, you can be a shield, or you can be, I guess it's kind of a shield in a different way. Combat shield, out of combat shield, basically. And then you can choose a handicraft. So you can choose cooking. This one worked kind of party-wide, which is nice. So this one, if you cook a meal, all eaters heal a D10 instead of a D6. You can build stuff, so you can craft, except for alchemy and cooking. And because alchemy is the other one, everything you craft with alchemy has its usage die increased a step. So we don't know about usage dice yet, but obviously this hasn't. We don't know what alchemy does yet, but we're getting an idea. And then you've got all your abilities. I'm going to read a high-end. Let's just read a high-end chum ability. Which one that's got a little bit of meat to it? All right, so level 8, you get home and hearth. The Loyal Chum can make any camp feel like a warm and cozy hearth, no matter where they are. The charm, check. Once every session, on a 6 to 8, choose one option below. On a 9 to 11, choose 2. On a 12 plus, get all 3. In addition, the chum gains access to a home in a chosen settlement where a friendly NPC lives, perhaps a family member or significant other. When the party eats and rests here, recover 2d6 courage, or 2d10 if the loyal chum uses the cooking perk also. The location is hidden from wandering intruders and unfriendly NPCs, and you can tinker checks. If you're tinkering with something, gains advantage. That's really cool. I like those. I'll probably have to go through these because I think there's some nice ones I would just give to people. But it's a cool, it's a good support ability. And then the Rascal. Is the Rascal the last one? I'm not sure. But you can play a Rascal if you want to be a sneaky rogue who easily gets into and out of trouble. And their style is, I like this, a burglar, a charlatan, or a ruffian. So burglars always got their lock picks and has advantage with picking locks. A charlatan can create an alias, an elaborate alias complete with a disguise kit that can even make them look like other folk. That's really cool. But the ruffian also gets to knock some unsuspecting goon or bruiser unconscious. So again, right, so we're not doing backstab, but this is actually better in a sense because you just get to do it. But they have to be unsuspecting. So they're unsuspecting, which presumably means you've been sneaking around, hiding, blah, 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 and you just get to knock one out. Which I like. All right, choose a hustle. It's a tough world. Fibbing. You gain advantage on trickery. Again, these are once. Usually, it seems like everything right now is once every session. Gambling or pickpocketing. And then we get some abilities. Good stuff. And now we have, looking like we're getting to our folk. Boggart, which is, I guess, is your sort of elfy. Yeah, because there's no elves. Hey, look at that. No elves, no dwarves, unless there's another page where we are going to... Oh, no, wait. Yep, no elves, no dwarves. We do humans. So you have Boggart, Boggle, Bogril, Bugbear, Gelatinous Goo, Gnomes, Goblins, Humans, Imps, Mushrooms, Quartles, Shrim, or Shrime, I'm going to say Shrim, Skeletons, Welkins, Waylands, and Wugs. All right, very cute, going totally anthropomorphic, but you get some different stuff. I mean, you can obviously see where you can see, Quartles, okay, we kind of know what that is. Mushrooms, we got that. Welkins will look familiar. Waylands are interesting. Instead of going dwarves, we get goblins and bugbears, and just in terms of, instead of like your dwarf and orc, because there's no orcs either, or half orcs, so we get some of the different things. I like bogrils as kind of your amphibian things. Instead of getting kind of a dragonborn or lizard person, we get a amphibian person. Very cool. Cool. All right. So the steps: select your folk, select a bonus skill, choose a perk, or 2 perks and a quirk. Note your size, because I guess size is going to be important, and choose a homeland. All right, I'm going to, I don't know if I'm going to go through all of these. Let's pick some of the odder ones. Or not odder, I should say kind of different ones. So we got the Bogrils. They can be medium or big. Their skills, +1 realms, +1 athletics, or +1 vitality. And then -1 sneak, -1 nimbleness, or -1 tinker. Then you could pick one of the homelands. Their perks are they have a wanderer. Cities are far too cramped for many bogrils. Once every session, if a PC rolls a dangerous encounter, they can re-roll the travel check because they're kind of their expert wanderers. That's cool. That's from their culture. Their ancestry, deep breath. They can hold their breath for up to 30 minutes. And they're a long leaper. They have proficiency in jumping over chasms. That's cool. And their quirks, they can have a clammy handshake. Oh, yeah. No one likes a clammy handshake. I know that much. And they also... Oh, this is good. They can have an involuntary ribbit. Unfortunately, they can ribbit loudly during an inopportune quiet moment. That is pretty funny. Ribbit. What was that? That's good. Those are very clever. I like those. All right, so let's look at the goo. I'll read the goo's description. Gelatinous goos are jelly creatures native to Eames core and come in many sizes and colors, though blue is the most common. They are highly malleable, able to flatten and squeeze through cracks, and they can withstand incredible temperatures. They have no eyes or mouth, but they can perceive and emote nonetheless, and they eat by absorbing food within their translucent jelly bodies, breaking down soft organic matter. Goos speak their own unique language, gelatinous gooese, and can understand folk tongue but cannot speak it. Since they are few and far between, there is no strong gelatinous goo culture to speak of in the Mucklands. That's a shame. So their perks are gem sniffing. In the wild, gelatinous goos forage for gems and ores to eat, so they make excellent treasure hunters. I thought they ate organic material, but I guess they'll eat that stuff too. They are heat resistant, and they have a jelly body. Let's see, so they can make a vitality check to squish and squeeze through tight cracks and openings. They can also secrete a slippery goop that lasts for several minutes. And their quirks can be language barrier. Some gelatinous goos find it particularly hard to get by without friends. When the PC is alone, they suffer disadvantage communicating with NPCs. And then another quirk is legless. While the bottom of a goo is called the foot, they don't have legs. They gain no benefit from any leg wear and footwear. Womp womp. Oh, sorry there, gelatinous goop. You can't fit one boot onto your giant foot. All right. Is there one more? Let's do the skeletons. I like the colorful hat, and I don't remember what this garb is called, but I like it. Sentient talking skeletons are extremely rare. In the uncommon event that anyone does encounter a skeleton, they are almost invariably mindless, tireless minions of evil. However, skeletons that still retain their soul are like any other folk, minus the coat of skin and twist of guts. They may not remember their former life, but they pursue wants and dreams with fervor. Unfortunately, peasants and the like tend to find any sort of skeleton spooky. I can understand that. Their perks are unfinished business. They can have an additional personal quest. They never go hungry. They don't need to eat, obviously. And they're also another one, bag of bones. They can't be poisoned. And they have a +1 block against bladed weapons. So this is another one, slightly crunchy, right? Because there was always in classic D&D, if you're fighting a skeleton, your sort of stabby weapons don't do as well as your blunt crushing weapons, just because you might stab. The idea is that you might stab through the space. Where in a flesh and blood thing, you would just hit flesh, but in this case, it's not. You just go through air, like where their stomach would be or something like that. But if you're hitting them with a mace or something kind of blunt, then that would do it. So they're kind of giving that to you here. But it means you got to keep track of if you're being hit with a bladed versus different sort of weapon. And their quirks, feared. They have deficiency in making first impressions, and they could have brittle bones. They have one less courage, and one less they suffer a penalty to resist wounds. So there we have it. Oh, do I want to do Waylands? Ocean-faring people that trace their lineage to the lost ancient kingdom of Waylor. They have deep breath, or they can have their perks deep breath, thick skin, and whale song. And their quirks blow hard. They have a deficiency in running because they're better suited for the water, and they need to stay hydrated. Cool. And then we have homelands. There's an optional rule here. Armed and dangerous. In Land of Eam, PCs are often thrust into their first adventure with only their guile and guts, and no weapon to speak of. But if your group prefers to choose weapons at the start of play instead of rolling 2 random mundane items, PCs can select a single mundane item. All right, cool. Okay, so this is kind of neat. So depending where you're from, you get some different proficiencies and you get some different equipment, which is kind of fun. So it gives you kind of it makes your choice of place kind of initially a little bit important, I guess. Or at least interesting, so you just get different stuff. So, each of the places gets you some different. I'm not going to read through all these, but, So, for example, Drippy Downs, you get proficiencies in fairy lore, hunting, climbing, jumping, cooking, and wrestling. I like that spelled with an R. And then equipment, bear trap, bedroll, canteen. I guess you would roll I guess you don't get all of them. You roll them, right? So, are there 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8. So I guess you'd roll a d8. I'm surprised that if you are rolling these randomly, I'm not sure why you don't have these numbered to make it easier to roll, just to make it more obvious. But I'm not sure because they don't. I'm guessing these are all mundane. I mean, they read as mundane stuff, but they don't say they're mundane stuff. In any case, this kind of stuff you, I guess, potentially could have. The Drippy Downs, a bear trap, bedroll, canteen, knife, normal rations, an umbrella, walking stick, or cookware. And now we get to the stories. The GM. Okay, so session 0 is essential for creating each player's character story. Every class has unique options to get their character stories off the ground and help flesh out a PC's personality, history, and establish inter-PC relationships. So you get a backstory, some ideals and flaws, a personal quest, and then some relationships, and then you're building on. So obviously they want to, this is a story about, fellowship, right? So they're kind of building that up, which I think is cool. Because I think, you remember one of their starting, I guess their Appendix N or their inspiration, right? Kind of Lord of the Rings plus the Muppets. Lord of the Rings was really about those relationships, right? The relationships between the hobbits and each other, relationships between the hobbits and the other members of the fellowship that developed, the relationships between different members of the fellowship. So those things are important, just, even taking outside the hobbit interrelationships, how their relationship with Strider started and changed and grew, and Gandalf, and, all that kind of stuff. All right, so now we have some backstories that are numbers, so they're to roll on. So you just choose how you became any one of these. So a bard, how are you? What inspired you? Was it a traveling troupe that you came to your hometown? You might have encountered a mysterious golden voiced wanderer? You found an old abandoned instrument. Your parents were musicians. You snuck into a play as a child and dreamed of following that path. And then, or finally, it wasn't easy. Music was outlawed, but you practiced every night. And then you had an ally and a rival, which you also create, which could be, an old troop member or a friendly charlatan. And the rival could be a rival performer, a spurned lover, or a noble with a grudge. So there you go. So those are cool. And you get those for each one. And then you have some ideals, which you also get through your class, your calling. You roll or choose an ideal, something the PC tends to do by default. At the end of each session, the player engaged with their PC's ideal, they gain an XP. And then at level 5, you gain another one. Okay, that's a good way so that's interesting. So that just gives you a way to mitigate the rising XP requirements for each level by giving you more ideals that you can do. And I'll pick a different one. So for the loyal chum, their ideals are, or could be, make a new friend, risk their life for a party member, volunteer to go into danger, de-escalate a fight, take on someone else's burden, or stick up for someone weaker. And I think what I appreciate about these is that they're specific. Now, I have a similar thing in my system where I use virtues. You're doing bravery, and you don't get XP by doing bravery, but it gives you can add stuff to dice. But I don't have it being specific. Now, in my game, I want people to be able to find all kinds of different things to do. So, I want them to be open. But in this case, since you're literally getting XP from it, I think by making it specific, it's easy for everybody to understand. And again, I think this plays in that tension that I'm just finding between the kind of the crunchiness with the stuff that it seems to me geared to help folks kind of get up and running and sort of figure out what they need to do. So if I'm a totally new RPG player, and I create a loyal chum, I get one of these ideals, maybe I roll for it, maybe I pick one, but it's really specific so that there's no question I need to ask, because it's going to be pretty obvious. Okay, I'm going to go in headlong first and, what they mean. It's not going to be a situation where I do something and then, me and the referee are like, but I thought this was like, no. Because like in my system, right, it works differently. But again, if my system were working for XP and I said, oh, you're doing, I don't know, say bravery at the end of the session, they're like, well, I was brave. And I go, you really, were you? And then, because we don't necessarily agree on what bravery means. But in case we're just says, hey, go headlong into danger, volunteer, do that. It's a clear action where you can say, yes, I did do that, or no, I didn't. But it's going to be pretty clear what that is. Well, that clarity, I think, for new players is nice. It's more limited, right? You don't get you're going to have to find a specific chance to do that. And there are going to be some sessions where you might not have a chance, or you just don't want to because it's like, oh God, this is super dangerous. I don't want to do that. But I think the specificity for this is nice. All right, so those are ideals. Now flaws. Let's look at the flaws for the gnome. Let's see. So some gnomish flaws, which again, you could choose a flaw, an impulse that gets you into trouble. So for gnomes, you can tell the truth when it's very inconvenient. You can trust someone dubious. You can give more than you afford. I guess you can go into debt to their detriment. You could pursue knowledge at any expense. You could poke your nose where it doesn't belong. You can act holier than thou to someone. And obviously these all have to be meaningful. You can't act holier than thou to somebody for whom it means nothing. And these are ways, again, experience. So and I like these systems. I have these in my own game where I'm not going to tell you, as a referee, I'm never going to say, hey, gnome, you're supposed to trust somebody dubious, so you got to trust that guy. It's like, no. Or I'm not going to go, gnome, roll against something to not trust this guy. No. But if you do that, you get XP, right? So you're encouraging the players to take on these imperfections in their character or these avenues, these complications, but you're giving that carrot of, hey, if you actually engage with the complication, you actually get something for it, but you get to choose. And I think that's really good because too often sometimes, and this is where alignment, I think, got into trouble, is, the GM's telling you your alignment dictates you must do a thing or whatever. And in this case, like, you know what? I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm going to give you this nice carrot out there. I guess it's kind of like using the stick, right? We're not going to use the stick and punish you if you don't go by your alignment. A cleric, you didn't go with your alignment, so your god has abandoned you and you lose all your spells. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say if you do the thing, then you get this reward, and hopefully the reward is worth getting into a little bit of trouble, is giving you and presumably the rest of the party a complication. And then for personal quests, again, it's on a per class basis. Let's go for, what do we even looked at? The Dungeoneer. So you can journey somewhere and plant the flag in their name. You can learn the forgotten language of someone. You can find the lost treasure of something. You can discover the long lost city of something. You can make first contact with someone, or you can build a successful company from the ground up and call it something. So these are obviously these are going to take time, and presumably you fill in that blank when you're creating the personal quest. Not, hey, I went somewhere, so now I'm going to fill in the blank post fact. No, but that's cool. So come up, you work with, and this is a part of that working with the GM around that world building to figure out where you want to go and plant your flag, if that is the thing you choose to do. Okay, and then relationships. More things you can roll on. Did I do the Knight Errant yet? I don't think so. So I'll just read. Oh, you know what? I'll let the dice decide. So we got 8 of them. Where's the D8? I left some of my dice at my game last night. So I got to remember to get those back. I rolled a 6. Okay. Blank is a bit of a know-it-all, but has never let me down. And it's just like, it seems like this is kind of a, just a role-playing starter, right? And then we get items and equipment. So yeah, basically you're using slots. Some are 0. Some take up 0, which means that you can put 5 of them, 5 to 1. Then there's 1 slot items, 2 slot items, and 3 slot items. They're using usage dice, which I'm not going to go through, but usage dice essentially are a way of incrementing kind of abstractly the amount of stuff that you have instead of tracking each unit. And then we have different item types. Okay, so mundane items could be tools, trinkets, clothing, armor, and weapons. Magnificent items, they have a magnificent trait. I see. So when it said the magnificent weapon, so you'd get for the Knight Errant, they got a magnificent weapon, and you roll for a trait. That's what that trait is, a magnificent trait. And then you have magic items that, they may have charges, and they may be cursed, and then you have relics. Well, let's see. So you have magic and also some kind of tech. Weapons. So we have some weapon rules. So they're differentiating between weapons. One-handed melee weapons are kind of as dread as they are listed. Two-handed ones, they inflict an extra dread. Improvised weapons, you roll with disadvantage for dread. Ranged weapons, you get disadvantage at either at close or at distant range. Thrown weapons, you can't throw. You basically lose. It looks like you're using range bands, and you lose a range band if it's thrown. Dual wielding. So I see. So if you're not a Knight Errant or Rascal, you suffer a penalty to your attack, but if you make your attack roll, you actually get advantage on dread. So you'd roll dread twice and get the better one, which seems to be better than two-handed. That's interesting. I feel like I want to swap those. I don't know. I guess presumably the two-handers just do better damage also. Or, sorry, dread. I don't know. Interesting choice. Artillery. Oh, yeah, right, because the weapons, right, because that's, okay, yeah, so the weapons, I see, so the weapons don't have their own, the dread is by class, not by weapon, and two-handers inflict an extra dread, but dual wielding, you make one, dread with advantage just seems to be more powerful than +1 dread. And if you're a knight errant, I guess the only thing is you don't get the armor of a shield, right, because you can get shields. All right, that's fine. I'm not going to call myself an expert on the mechanics. It's an interesting choice just in a vacuum, but obviously I'd want to play it to figure it out more about how it works. Shields basically can blocks. You roll for some dread that they can block, but you can only do it twice every combat. You can get your armor damaged if you're defying death or suffering a wound. You don't know what that is yet. Coins and economy, they're using kind of the standard copper, silver, gold, and then ancient. And we have a bunch of the stuff I'm not going to go through. A whole bunch of stuff. So the traits for magnificent items can be trusty, light, exceptional, parry. So you get a whole bunch of kind of adjectives. They're not necessarily adjectives, but I guess they're traits. And they're different, whether it's bladed, ranged, flexible. I guess it's like a whip kind of thing. Or blunt, which is cool. And they have some armor traits for polearms, for tools, containers, and clothing. And they're different die sizes. So clothing is only a D4 table, but armor is a D10, et cetera, et cetera. Treasure hunting. Okay, so treasure hunting represents a PC's chance to find exceptional loot from treasure hoards that they discover in Land of Eam. PCs start with a treasure hunting bonus of +0, which can't be increased with experience. Certain classes gain a +1 treasure hunting through perks or abilities. Some magic items grant bonuses to treasure hunting. Otherwise, a treasure hunting bonus is granted by finding high-level treasure hoards. Okay, so this is kind of cool. An interesting little thing here. Every dungeon has at least one treasure hoard that the GM deliberately places in a location within. When PCs discover a hoard, they make treasure hunting checks to determine what they find. A party of PCs can make a number of treasure hunting checks according to the hoard's type, but must alternate making treasure hunting checks. Only one check per PC unless extra checks are available. All right, so a number of treasure hunting checks. So the GM will roll, I guess, a D12 plus the bonus, and then they go around, I guess, round robin making checks. Well, this is kind of interesting. So you place the treasure hoard. You're going to choose the type. It could be a loot pile, an old hoard, an ancient hoard, or a mythic hoard. Then you're going to assign a treasure level. That's based on the danger of the location. And then when the PCs find the hoard, they can make a number of treasure hunting checks according to the type, which would be the size. PCs add a bonus to their checks based on the treasure level. So the treasure level, if it's 1 to 4, there's no bonus. 5 to 7 is +1, and 8 to 10 +2. And then you can potentially have adversary treasures. So the types. Okay, so a loot pile you can do 2 checks. Wait, I guess these are all you get. 2 checks, a pouch, and a component. What is a component? Is that for? One thing I'm finding is some of the things are not, I'm usually someone who likes things to be defined before they start popping up, because it's like, oh, a component, but is it a magic component? Is it a crafting component, which is on the facing page? What kind of component? I guess it is, because it says here, Crafting items require materials and sometimes components. Okay, so at least we know what components are, or unless they could be crafting or magic. I don't know. Anyway, so you get a pouch of silver coins, 2 treasure hunting checks, and a component. Right? Is that what I'm reading it right? There are 4 types of treasure hoards. Each type lists its guaranteed content and the number of times they can attempt treasure hunting checks to find additional treasure. Right, yeah. So you get the pouch, a component, and then 2 checks. So then you roll the checks, and you could have 2 materials, D6 materials, some copper coins, 2 mundane items, or a magnificent item. And then, so interestingly, it looks like, okay, so the materials, so I'm just looking at the tables. So as the hordes increase in size, the contents do update. So old horde, your chance of a magic item doesn't change, but you get more checks. And, oh, I see, you can get a sorry. So in the loot pile, there's no magic item chance, but you can get a magnificent item. Old horde, you can get a magnificent item or a magic item. And then ancient horde adds some potions in the mix. And the mythic horde adds relics and scrolls to the mix. And then you can use a lore check to identify magic items. Cool. And then we get into crafting. I don't think I'm going to go into the crafting too much. I'm curious about what you can craft. Oh, so you can craft mundane items. You can also craft magnificent items. Then there's alchemy, which you need recipes. And then you got cooking. And you can craft magic items. And they got something. So it's got a full, again, I'm not going through the details here because I'm not super intrigued by crafting. But that's cool. It's got the rules for everything. Okay, then you have components. And there are several component types: beast components, elemental components, fish components, and herb components. Okay, you got to get fish components by fishing. Fair enough. And then they've got some stuff for finding components, and then also component locations. So that's just kind of cool. So if you want to find beast components, you can go to the Cairn Stinger Needle. You can go to the these are the ones you can find in Drippy Downs. Might be a snag bunny tooth, a thunderhorn horn, a wolf pelt, a wungalope fur. Oh, those are really cool. So I guess you could find these laying around. You don't have to necessarily defeat the creature. But that's cool. And then we have more about beast components and the recipes. Wow, there's a lot going on here. There's definitely a lot of depth in this system, right? But also, of course, there's some complexity added in here. But of course, you don't have to, I might want to do a gentle approach and maybe not worry about crafting stuff right away. Kind of add these things that you're going in. But obviously, there's a lot of things you can do with these components as you're going. Whew, look at all these tables. Components everywhere. Cooking recipes. Let me just say on the cooking. Oh, so you get different effects. You can make bandy clam chowder that heals 1d6 courage. And you need bandy clam pearls. Not bandy. Don't you need the clams, not the pearls? But yes. You can also make caramelized murga slime that heals some courage, but you need some murga toad slime. Very cool. They all have one ingredient. Oh, no. Wait, no, sorry. Nakadinky jambalaya has 2 ingredients: juvenile crawlbads and Nakadinky glitter shrimp. Oh, there's another one here. Telepathic cola needs golden oli and mirrorweed. These are very cool. Though I almost would prefer. Yeah. I was gonna say, I think what I would have been would be nice. Maybe they do this because I'm wondering if you could make your own recipes, right? So I'm wondering, but they don't. You don't get you don't quite get that. So for example, for the fish components, Grouper has it tells you the recipe. Hey, you can use it in grouper soup, which is great. But I'd kind of like to know. It means I need to cross-check the grouper soup recipe to find out what the actual effect of grouper is. So in this case, grouper soup, it heals courage. So it might be fun to do something where I can make a recipe. I guess that's where the crafting comes in. But I'm thinking maybe something a little more free-flowing. But this game is more structured. It's laying it down. But look, you're getting all stuff. And I think this is gonna, I feel like this is gonna hit, I can see it hitting a lot of folks' that thing they love, right? People love crafting, they love these different cooking things. It has very much almost like a, I don't know, like what are those like comfy kind of games like Stardew, was it Stardew Valley, or these kind of games where you're doing all these little cooking and you're coming up with all your I almost can see that kind of completionist thing where I want to get all the different cooking recipes. I want to find all these different things, and so giving you this, it's giving you a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of impetus if you're someone who's going to look at that stuff and go, oh my gosh, I want to find that stuff. I want to learn that recipe. I almost think like I wouldn't even hide the recipes. Like let you see them, and then if you want to try to find it, find the recipe, or learn the recipe, right? Learn it. Do some learning. All right, where am I at? I'm almost at 2 hours. I'm at over 2 hours. Okay. I think, how much more do I have to do here? Not that I got combat, I got downtime, where's the magic? Did I miss magic? Couldn't have missed magic. Could I have? Combat conflicts. All right, let me just see. Magic's got to be somewhere. I could not have missed. Could I have missed magic? I'm just trying to get to the bookmarks. Where are the bookmarks? Adventure. No, it's not going to be there. No, not adversaries. Adventuring. Okay. So I think I'm going to stop here. So I'm going to call it here for today. So we'll call this part 1. And then hopefully tomorrow I'm able to do part 2, where we will continue on from adventuring and on to the rest. There, like I said, I think that maybe the interesting thing from mechanically speaking is definitely this tension between stuff that I feel like is geared for, I don't want to say kids or family, because it's not for kids, but kind of new, guided and in a way streamlined and made clear for folks who are, say, coming this from not being super familiar with other RPGs. And then also this kind of crunchy stuff going on with a lot of stuff that's, that's sort of structured, and a bit of crunch in there. And it's interesting to see. I'm curious in play how that works, just with the setting that seems kind of whimsical and fun and light, and then you have this kind of, but the underpinnings and the mechanics underneath are on the crunchier side. And I'm not saying that you can't or shouldn't do that, but I'd be curious to see kind of how that plays out. And we'll have to keep going. And of course, I haven't played it, so I don't know. It definitely makes me intrigued to want to give this a go at some point and run it or playing it either way and kind of see how it goes. But it's definitely I like the setting. What we're getting from it is really fun. I like what they're doing with a lot of stuff. Some of it, I'm wondering, is a little bit maybe out of my comfort zone in terms of how much crunch I want, ideally. But, that's not to say that I won't love it, right? Because I'm just reading it. But it altogether, it's a pretty interesting package, and the art and everything is wonderful. That kind of communicates that theme and tone. So we'll see how that goes. But we got more to do. But I will stop it now. We will come back to it, like I said, hopefully tomorrow. But just look for the stream. I'll tag part 1 on the end of this title, and then tomorrow will be part 2. So that's all I got for now, folks. So have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now.